Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, director Benedikt Just, who's here to share with us his new documentary, The Heart Revolution. So did you know that scientists have found evidence that our heart's main purpose is probably not just pumping blood? Well, today's guest is going to dive into just that. At the age of 13, director Benedikt Just became obsessed with finding the secrets of life and started reading books to become a theoretical physicist and delivered a unified field theory. Realizing that no amount of knowledge would help him grasp the mysteries of life, he fell into a long, dark night of the soul. Exploring diverse spiritual traditions, his path took him beyond the well-known Eastern and Western fulfillment paradigms. He now shares his findings through films, music, articles, and collages. The rest of his life is dedicated to delivering a new story of life based on a redefinition of emotions and the human heart. So welcome to the show, Benedikt Just.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this film. We have to start from the beginning. So what even inspired you to create this?
That's usually the first question and some bit the hardest to answer. I try to keep it short. I think my whole journey to making this film started somewhat nearly 40 years ago when I was 13, and I was just obsessed with finding, the biggest mystery of the universe. And I had the feeling like if I can't find that, my life wouldn't have any meaning. And at that time, I thought I have to become a theoretical physicist. And then I wanted to find the so-called unified field theory that's in physics. It's the theory that explains everything. And so fast forward 30, 40 years later, most of my life, I didn't consciously follow that, teenage dream, vision, obsession, whatever. My life took me very, very different paths. But just a few years ago, I realized that I'm still doing the same thing. And I think with this film is my first attempt to answer the question, what's the biggest mystery of life? And it has to do with the heart and emotions and connections and the soul and all of that. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's
It did. And what a great story. I mean, it seems that things come full circle when we're supposed to be on a path, and you obviously are supposed to be doing what you're doing. And for a lot of people, they probably are going, well, I have a heart. So why is our heart not what we think it is?
Well, I assume that the majority of, reasonably educated people in the West, especially, if you ask them, what's your heart doing? What's the function of the heart? The answer is straightforward. Well, it's a muscle and it pumps blood. It's literally the first sentence on every website. If you Google, heart function, doesn't matter whether it's a small blog or it's the biggest, most well-funded university research center in the world. That's their answer. And the thing is that this idea came up roughly 300 years ago with the onset of the Industrial Revolution and the onset of a new line of thinking with science. And at that time, it was the big break from the dominance of religion. And then the counter movement, which we still have today, is that, well, everything has to be rationalized and explained and has to be measured and repeated. So that's science. And it's a really good approach. It's a very good approach. But it also ended up reducing our heart to being a pump. And before that, for hundreds and thousands of years, the heart, you can see that in all, spiritual traditions, was always connected with the ideas of a doorway to yourself, to God, to the universe, connection between you and others. So it has and no one talked about the heart pumping blood at that time. So in a way, it's a idea that's a few hundred years old, and it seemed to be, just irrefutable. But over the last century, there have been always a very few scientists and researchers who said, like, no, that's just not a good description for the heart and what's the heart doing. And so in the film, we try to show, of course, just a little bit of groundbreaking new scientific evidence that I think reasonably points or reasonably opens up the door to saying, like, okay, there's enough evidence that we could, without looking silly, ask the seemingly silly question, what does the heart do? And does it do more than pumping blood, or does it pump blood at all? Or what does it do?
I think those are such important questions because it seems like for a long time we've been maybe assuming that it does certain things without maybe looking at some deeper meaning or deeper reasoning as to what is happening.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and with the onset of science, it's 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 a little bit, before everything was, the priest tells you this is how the world is, and you got to believe it. Yeah. And then scientists said, like, no, that's not a good approach. We have to measure it. But now we've gone all the way in the other direction where it's like, if we can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Yeah. So, and I think neither of those is a good approach to finding the deepest mysteries of life. Maybe not everything that exists we can measure, I'm pretty sure. And 100 years ago, we could measure a lot of things that we can measure today. We couldn't measure. So we're always refining our approach, and we're finding new things, and we have to update old ideas, refine old ideas, maybe ditch some old ideas. And I think that's now time to do the same thing with the heart.
Well, I think it takes somebody extraordinary like you to bring this to the forefront. Can you tell us about some of the experts in this film?
Sure, yeah. So we have Dr. Rollin McCready from the Heart Mass Institute. They have done really groundbreaking research on the heart since 30 years. They investigate what they call the more energetic side. So that's has to do with emotions. They do a lot of heart. They have done a lot of research on heart rate variability. That's a very, very important factor, not just for this more spiritual stuff like connection between people and emotion, but really healthcare. 30 years ago, very few people knew about this. Today, it's part of every health app and every sensor wristband that you have. It has an app which measures your heart rate and deducts the heart rate variability because it's such an important factor to give a good overview over your health status and also how relaxed you are. Then we have Professor Pollack, Gerald Pollack from the University of Washington. I mean, they just knocked it out because they literally found that water moves through very tiny tubes. They're as tiny as our capillaries, the small vessels in our body. But they found that in a little pool in their laboratory, that water began to move spontaneously without any force being applied. And so they've done 8 years of research to see what that actually means and how it works and on and on. And so we show, just a summary or some insights of that in our film and what that means for the question, does the heart pump blood? And to just give a little bit of a hint, if some Russians calculated that, scientists calculate that if the heart would really pump, like press blood through the vessels, we would have to have a blood pressure that would be 1,000,000 times higher than we currently have, because the vessels are so small, and the blood cells are bigger than the smallest vessels. And so there are a lot of things that just like, yeah, that's crazy, that doesn't work. So these are the two main scientists, but then we also have Kabir Helminski, who's a Sufi sheikh, a Sufi master. He talks about the view on the heart from his tradition. We have Anita Morjani sharing her experience of near death and what the emotions and feelings of love had to do with that. So it's not just science, but we weave together science and the spiritual aspects of the heart.
What do you hope audiences take away from the Heart Revolution?
Oh, that's a question I haven't encountered yet. That's a beautiful question. Well, I would say I hope that maybe what they find is that this childlike awe and wonder that we had when we were children and we were running out into nature and we discovered something and saw something and we had this, wow, this is like a magical place here. This is so beautiful and so wonderful. I hope that that it would, elicit some of that childlike wonder and awe again, instead of like, oh no, that can't be true, or oh yeah, I believe that. These are all reactions that come out of the mind. But if we stop thinking, oh, we know everything, or we don't believe this and that, and we just can get to this short point of like, whoa, I think this is what we would like to, for viewers to experience when they watch the film.
Where can people go so they can learn more about this film? I mean, because you've done some amazing research. I am like glued to your website, but I'd love for you to share that with us and where we can watch the film.
So it'll still take a while until we have the public release of the film. But if people are interested, they can go on our website, The Heart Revolution, just as the title of the film, theheartrevolution.film. And people who are interested can go. We have a research page where we share some research papers, and they can sign up for a newsletter, and then we'll let them know as soon as the film becomes available. We do run special screenings with organizations and companies and individuals. And in our newsletter, we also let them know when these special screenings become available.
Well, how exciting is that? Well, Benedikt, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne, for having me. All the best.
Well, thank you, Benedikt. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new documentary, The Heart Revolution. You can learn more about the Heart Revolution or schedule your own private screening for your group at theheartrevolution.film. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.